Good morning, Gen Rinpoche, Tashi Tale. Good morning, Katrina.
Good morning.
Joining us. Everyone online, we'll begin with some preliminary prayers. Find the link for them in the chat box. To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor of the world's supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the salute and destroyer, glory, conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you are born on this earth, you pace and strides, and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With a supreme science, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the three worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassion and protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I vow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning and clouds, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of false, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn mountains, land, sun, and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Tanda Dixon game. Oh yeah. Oh, do shit on. Oh yeah, that yeah. Jirable Sungudoa. Teba Timu Messi Tremis. Teba Timu Messi Tremis. Teba de Timu members Tremina Shede Sora. Teba Timu Messi Tremi. Kumbula so make Norgishos. Teba Jan Sosu Samultai Tunda Shembe Norbute. Yondangi Norbute. Shanda Toyake or Maresera. Teba Timu Messi Tremi. Kumbula so make Norgishos. Shanda Norchalene Kuma Kiora. Laya Duga. Whereas the Norchala Mo Kamba the Kangashan Namsa, Tobjakoja, patient on the cage, and some less, some shorts and mirrors are. Tabatim was Kumbula, so make it Norgi shows, Norgi show the Juvateresa. Tabatim message to me, Kumbula, so make it noise. Kundu Mongbe Transums, Mongbe Transum Gantires, Mongba the Maraz Tares ora. Juden de Send the Chasha, long dorking in a draw. Joachima Pejek and Gondula Mikovan Tobjek in a draw. Mele Tarwa to Tamjek but Tobjek in a Shikarina. Joa. Kundo Mombe Transum Surgeons, or Tezu Kangala Mombe Mombate, Jumber Senge, Landurgine, Chishindo Sheber Senge, Tremita Uresera. Kundo Mombe Transum Surgeons. Momba de Trana Shisora, Nambelul, Nabiga Sheva, Tradilini Yoris, Yomobe Trada, and Ekarsure. Oh, Mishibe Mombeta, Shitip Sigrata, Yomoda, Yomogishabe Paksat in Ratanda. Yomote Yomobetas, Condonga Tratola, so and Dressimless over. Tiwangil San and Sosutunga Yogora. Tisons are charged the dog, never can get the Trasigora. Quando Mombetas. Chom Chajans. That came to the Hako, Tamebala Soba, that is a Hako Nane. Mishibe Momba to the Rimbe Passan to Gora. Kundumumbe Transum Betine. Tato Chomyak Chajana Shin Tabsu Mangantum Batrogi Chos. And the Soso Garichequeba. Landor Genet, that you to Budachon and the Yarich and the Samu Karatan Queba. Soso Samlulia. Lotin Chetova, Soso Lapsi Captunge. Milia pe tonle te karsik do tamme kunga sosos landor chego kari netsendi de chima penje sosos chetu gora tabse menga de batroge chos labja jangen so trobu chod de jobate reser tebate tebachene sosos samtan da shingi ora ani nezu yani karchuna ta te che ode che kyu kari me samtan che te kyule landor chetu kanga haku yora chotende tabse menga de batroge chos Pombar you can make your choice. Ratu would have Kazations on Echo, Jurame Genge, Pombar you can. Tabatim was to Kumbers and again, you couldn't move a transition. Tabsumanga don't batrog choice order. Tabsumanga don't batrog choice. Pombar you can make your Zawi Sera. Ratu would have Kazations, Tropunda Yachina, so to would have chosen Echo year to Rishidara Dagmara. So Yahweh any I have Jetos Divuyangra. Pombarrier, so the wood of Shivich, we will show you the Shavi Nasura. Pombarrier Jan Minjur, Zawis, Zawades, trouble. Kadina, you maybe trouble the Resigara. Oh, yeah.
No.
Among us, I do. Lela was on the treasure.
No. So here, to begin with a verse from the Jataka tales, the birth stories, here it says that listening is the lamp dispelling the darkness of ignorance. So our hearing, that which we know, is like a lamp that gets rid of the darkness, that lack of knowledge. And it's like a supreme wealth that cannot be stolen by thieves and such. So the knowledge that comes from our learning, from our having heard and thought about things, this is something that can't be stolen away. It can't be lost in any way. Like if we leave our house, maybe someone will go and steal everything out of it. Any other kind of wealth could be lost due to some sort of misfortune or something, or being stolen. But the kind of wealth that we gain from hearing is the supreme wealth that can't be stolen away in any kind of way. And the verse continues saying, this listening is like a weapon that overcomes the enemy of confusion. In Buddhism, our real enemy is our confusion, our delusion, our lack of knowledge about what it is that we should adopt and abandon. Not understanding karma, cause, and effect, we create the conditions to be born in the lower realms or to not be able to achieve liberation. But this is like a weapon that destroys that kind of not knowing. It gets rid of that enemy. So our delusion is our real enemy that prevents us from gaining what we want to have. In Buddhism, we identify two primary enemies: the enemy of our delusions or our afflictions, those kinds of things like anger and jealousy, hatred, competitiveness, those kinds of afflictions are our enemy. Due to that, we create karma and then take rebirth in the lower realms and so forth. And then our second enemy is the kind of obscurations to omniscience, those sorts of imprints left by that kind of ignorance. And it is then through our knowledge, through learning these things, that we are able to understand the faults of certain actions and eliminate the kinds of things that we don't know, our lack of knowledge. So our learning, our hearing is like a weapon in this way. And the verse then continues saying that it's the best counselor, teaching the proper method through personal instruction. So this is like the best kind of advisor that we could have. It gives us what we need in terms of what is explaining what is good, what is bad, what is it that's going to allow us to get out of the lower realms, what is it that allows us to act for our future lives, and so forth. So by knowing the kind of cause and effect relationship, we can actually develop those sorts of proper causes. So it's like the best kind of counselor, the best advisor that we can have is our own learning and knowledge. And it continues saying that our learning is like a steadfast friend, even in times of misfortune. So when bad things come along, this is a kind of friend that will be steadfastly with us, always by our side. Other friends, they might sort of turn away when times are bad for us, or maybe they're there a little bit closer when things are good. But here, the kind of learning that we gain is a friend that will always be with us, no matter what sort of misfortune, a good or bad kind of things that we encounter. And so here, this is the verse will continue. We'll stop with that part of it.
Oh yeah, oh the Causality. 당가라서 숑리아로와 최년의 진에 최락까지 태바 망하셔가 이나 대점지고 삼루동에 된다 망하신거라. 남배 최대고 태바 삼빈들요 말아 대신바를 선다가셔야지래요 말아. 태바시 삼바시 곰바시 태섬 곰성색도 어디 태배 된다대야 태바까지 야치와 태바 망보시나 아니 망보신 거라도 태배 고아 망주라 그랬더니 소소 삼루동에 망하요 그래. 대중수 삼중수도 태배 된다 된다 세우도 된다 송도 삼사 고아들라나 태배 시럽세요라. 나대 된다 등원에 컨데레도 인구의 교세가도 소소소 삼루동에 제바셔셔 어등원에 레샤 삼사 미신예수는 삼중수요라. 삼발에 정했고 어등원에 레샤 삼 소소소소를 이시토고요도 태바다가 남산들 차샤인 버레섬 이시션 때 말에 송거라. 소소 삼루동거라. 소소 신고라. 미팅데 시기세서 많이 봐. 소소 하고 진짜 레세르스 거도 어디인데 삼중도 고야래. 소소 삼루동 다들 교세 삼루동 인배 교세 가래. 거바가래 어딘데 삼루동 어디 아버지 교세할 때는 아버지 신수는 삼중기 미신이 봤으라. 남부들의 퇴중기 고아서라. 퇴발 때는 어딘데 손도 삼대 고아들은 되네 소소 삼루다네 야보신스 어디 된다고네 티라레도 왔음 소소소소리 이치랩소나 르베고네르다 다가시 몬데 르베사마요 다데 교세 삼루다네 어디 그바텐데 레샤티 용고베 교세 티르 레샤 삼 예신이소나 남중 아주 지바 참마서라 Jesus Papa Tata Kusan Latino Otiresha some Nishan Yison, some Jungi, Lokevra, Tijun, some Junsigra, some Jungi Shiras. Janete Yana Yandu come the co. Cheviton that the Shimba some in the Yomarwa. Madame Watachina, Panasosicula Tangzin Yore, Tangzi the Mabasuet and the Yana Yandu some Tangur Mato. Tin Dojo Delia, Joe Toma Mevana come the Orwa. What he did in Namsako. Nesu chinjilo iba hakona namsa mevre chigmarwa te yane yando komne midaba inada tumeo inada toa inada chamba inada nyiji inada kare ina seba inada kanga yane yando komgurmado kondulike iba hako seba yende iba hako asamgi digmarwa kumji cheni yane yando komgurwa o tiesu de karsare kumjo sche tesam komso kugardo ya.
So here from the text, it's always emphasized that the more that we know, the more vast our hearing and learning, the more that we are able to contemplate and reflect for ourselves. Because really, that's what we need to do. We have first the hearing or the sort of wisdom arisen from hearing or learning. And then there's the wisdom arisen through our own contemplation. And finally, the wisdom arisen through meditation. So hearing itself is not sufficient. When we gain the kind of wisdom of hearing, we think like, oh, this is what is said, this is what is explained, and so forth. But that mere knowledge is not sufficient to really gain certainty for ourselves, gain a kind of confidence in this. Rather, it's by having, again, a sort of vast amount of hearing that we are then able to contemplate in a really sort of expansive way. And this is where we, with reasoning and logic, ascertain for ourselves that it is really like this. Is this really how it is? And based upon sort of laying out reasonings, thinking about the logic of things and putting forth various kinds of arguments for things, that we are able to gain a kind of confidence, gain certainty for ourselves. Again, because it's not just sufficient to say like, oh, I know that these texts say this and this and this. That doesn't mean that we have really ascertained or gained real confidence in the meaning of that. But rather, it's only when we, based upon our own kind of reasoning and reflection, laying forth various reasonings and actually thinking through things, contemplating and reflecting again and again, that we can generate a valid kind of inference of those things that really brings forth the wisdom arisen through contemplation. But again, that kind of wisdom arisen through contemplation is itself not sufficient. We need to develop the kind of wisdom arisen through meditation. When it comes to things like impermanence or selflessness, think about the self-grasping that we have. This is something that we have been habituated to through countless rebirths. And so just thinking about it a little bit, or just habituating ourselves a little bit to the opposite of that, the wisdom realizing selflessness, is not sufficient to eliminate that. We have to habituate ourselves again and again, familiarize our minds through the sort of wisdom of meditation that arises based upon having that hearing and contemplation for ourselves. So when it comes to things like contemplating selflessness or suffering, thinking about love and compassion and patience, these are things where we have to engage in them again and again through meditation. Like say, even if we have contemplated well the kinds of faults of anger and the benefits of patience, we actually have to practice that. We have to meditate on that, habituate ourselves to it again and again in order to counteract the kind of strong habituations we have to the opposite. So just knowing through hearing and just knowing through contemplation are not enough. We have to sequentially build all of these kinds of wisdom.
Oh yeah, chebe sura, shenge gina sigurdo, kosusu karsode, shenge di tires tombuchi gande te chiche de susu kansa gi chwa yin sam yu amardo, chuji chwa sigurdo, chudi sachim busonze te tundaliati, chite tinde ya shuede. O ti yin sam gu yore, chigal te dusa kamara rimame de kumase bachu, mulalo da tin duje chunam te darta ase, midaba kom koyata. Chuji chawa yin sam tikal te amado, sosu chi chidam mide chibara amado, mesete ke yomarwa. Kende chego bade chumden de shirjen gin dosum be kapsa, chumden de rani gi tensen gi chichambala shuse. 좀 된데 랑이기 시진 노송에 트두서 코랑게 샴 어딘데 남겨도 생기 티샴발라 쇼스 최송에의 양다과 강란 지권 매바 셰쇼바 왜 내주다 틈바 어딘데 손자 강란 지권 매바 셰쇼바 손자 생기 티셰 조조시겨도 어디 느깔서 그래 그로 소소야 보초체 아니 지 수치 셰베네 셰베 뭔지 규벨라마다 대수 강가를 소화도 전에 대수 상마랑을 좀 소소티 땅이로 실매치 셰고요라 뭐야 아니 셰드자 셰제 셰들이 지단 고셰단 이르지요라 흉심이 뜬다고 시자 임배찬에 때는 뵙지다 소소 심비를 바꿔둘 자네 냠솔 랑글랑게 셰다를 지니어도 어디니 나네 소 심비를 자네 팬지도 지지 셰고를 송거도 가져도 삼로야 팬에 뜬다려 셰제 뜬다데 소소 셈다 자네 랑도르기 네카리네 데다 파자네 셰고레스 동지식도 안 동집에 제대해서 되고 소소 심비를 때네 멜론다 마스네 소소 심비 멜론나 셰셰 애니 레도 교회 카르도 연대가 가르치에도 소소 메시 멜로를 때나 교회도는 바세기 세기 치고도 어디 나신지 삼르단에 냥고래 선거도 셰고래 생계게 조 심비를 팬베시도 파조데 심비단 제니 셰고래서 지단고 시제 내수 제제 내수 때는 법에 주기 셰베나 세상 팬도 연구 말와 그냥 아주 근데 섬기와 남주가 아주 세리번도 지나지 교다 경기 깨다도 또 삼르다도 그 유한도도 삼대 건좀 메다와서 삼차되거라 이 코란 피게 뒤에 삼바도 소소 심기 남규된데 삼기도 대단 전에 티게 삼르다게 말아 남배셔도 그 티시제 내주 때는 법도 소소 남규 근데 멤버 삼기도 왔다 뒤에도 안 뒤에도 삼제 소소 셈다 자네 교화로지 누군 누구시제 삼르다고 요라 다 마음다서 야 어디시잖아
So here, when it comes to then explaining the Dharma, those of us who are listening as well as those explaining, we need to have the proper sort of understanding here. Now, when someone is explaining the Dharma, they're usually sitting on a high throne, and someone might think that that's sort of out of respect for the greatness of the person that's teaching, but really it is emblematic of the greatness of the Dharma. So these are the kind of things that we need to reflect upon. And like someone who is teaching the Dharma, giving a kind of explanation, they shouldn't be sort of grasping at their own self. We should, again, like the verse that was recited at the beginning of class, like a star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, or a bubble, see conditioned things as such. We should, again, remember impermanence and not be sort of caught up in maybe pride or something while explaining the Dharma. And again, the sort of symbolism of sitting on a lion throne is to represent teaching the Dharma with the four fearlessnesses, as the Buddha has explained to Maitreya. It's sort of the kind of teaching in accordance with the way that things are, having that fearlessness, that it's not wrong in any sort of way. And these kinds of this is the symbolism behind putting such a high throne. It's not for the person, but rather for the kind of greatness of the Dharma. And again, when we imagine our own root lama sitting on a throne, embodying all of the previous lineage lamas and so forth, and imagining them descending into us and blessing us, there's a blessing that comes from that. But again, it's not just because of the sort of like highness of the person, it's through the Dharma itself. And so when we are thinking about the two ways in which we could explain something, there is the way where we are putting forth something so that it is to be understood, like, oh, it is this, and these are the facts of something. And then there is the way in which we explain that really meets with someone's own mind, that actually sort of gets at their continuum and the kind of faults that they have there. So we could imagine this is like really striking at the heart of our own faults. We're not just sort of learning or hearing these things in order to know them as facts that are out there, but rather, again, we see like the Dharma is likened to a mirror, when we put that mirror to our own selves, we're looking to sort of be able to wipe away the faults. That's the reason why we are putting that mirror there. So it's not just for our hearing the Dharma is not just sort of to determine, oh, this is the way that things are. Like we could take the example of scientists. I mean, scientists examine the causes and effects of things. They are well aware that, say, things are impermanent, but they don't apply that sense of impermanence to themselves. It's sort of just like a factual thing that is there. We need to see the Dharma and what is taught in relation to our own minds, really meeting our own continuums and making an impact there. The Dharma is not being explained just for the purpose of sort of gaining knowledge of facts, but again, it's to apply to our own mind.
Oh, yeah, Pinanganjo, Ragwe Midabandi Samluta in Arwa, which an alternate Yungudwa. Pina Mindavici, so Yendivici. Samsal Nagi Sero, Rotirito Mendoceros. It's any alloy can do try a cover chatos and domenda Menderechadi. The house teaching Mirashi Tron, Pumbukichi, Tronshachi, Nashasen. Came marriage and the cook came a cocora and some other case on the door. That's also the order I want to sociate in the rare some Namjing in Mary, social care draw the social at Nani, Tamat in the Karanatuni. You may raise some such an assembly archive. Child do con you watch it right, Yora. Pajo de Saturn Nation co city co said could do the Senate came in the door. Ah, this is some of that so young than the simultaneous, Midaba Rabotas of social similar. Thank you, Ordo. She gave us no good. Mirrors and mirrors to strong to Aina. There is some blessing, some blacker, Tobjako Jat and the Tronsons, some blessing or Richara. Chitanko Rangshiri, she has some blessing the Panaka or Makanga, Tirangshima to Mandera. Or the Tobjako Jal teacher. Tobjako Jaka Marisha, Pesena. Someone and sometimes I navigate a woman to Chichi, she does and call Tadengi or Richara. Ne trato se cavolo chachi de kota dengi ore se o ngadi duyange tangi dasin do shi dasi asure titu ne ko de shara so yena titu ne ha go ere chiora o sabso che ore samsa tende ga mar samsa rich timane ko ta she o ke mar shi atir suzu sem da ba char che ti chi ore stenda kar so ti chene chore jin nyamje Yamson Yongene, Samly and George Duadua. The men temdange sort of che project carini some. The Javashudantua. Cousin Lavi Samcho. Javan Berlin do some metro dosana. Pumbu to the Shogun Abune gave a toyas your mother. Tam Sosun did that to the Tunguda mother. Chita me toyas your mother. Javado and Nimegolia can go to the Tronet and possible Ganga don't sit yourself a provider. Parking what does she soon anime don't make and get capture Dugdoa. The message tarchus Sigusara, two at the guest hit Madua. Look and bushes a tronsona. Consider don't Mimambuduya kitchen, Pumbu's kitchen, Dugdoa. The message tarchus on search. Do you mind Balachinaco Tolara? That two chin children which and she Chinaco Yawood radio, Chichi the choice in Sultana. This is you said right, I know passionate Gangato Sangaton, Chichi, Tonjan Russia, Yagumaris, that is some Tanda Regidoa. The Nazagal Dambule did in the Yungdoa. Pumbu to the kitchen, to this an assembly storage or Nicha Samsa, some Lokurgidoa. That's a Marco Mandara shows a Trump kid and Russia Yadra Madra kid, a Sato kid with so that she saw him during the Chigdoa. Oh, it is on the Carsoda. So Samlutan Juve, and Drelne, Samlutana, so than Drelne, Samlutana Pendoshora. We are teaching them one madrasa.
So, for example, when we think about course impermanence, like when we see friends or family, for example, that die, we can imagine that this is something that we might have to face. Like often when we see someone else, maybe someone that we don't know that dies or someone gets sick and so forth, we see it as sort of like over there. Like this isn't something that we think about as happening to ourselves. Sometimes when we have a situation where someone close to us that we are very familiar with dies, we might have a sense of like, oh, this is actually going to happen to me. But often when we see this happen in other people, someone dies, they carry away their corpse and so forth, we see other people get sick and all of these things. We're almost as if we're looking at inanimate objects. We don't have a whole lot of feeling about the kind of experience that they are going through. Now, maybe when it's like someone that we are close to and they suddenly pass away, there's a kind of worry that will arise, like, wow, they died so suddenly, and you might have a sense of like, oh, this could happen to me. And again, there might be a sort of discomfort that comes with that. But again, it's the nature of things. We too are going to have to pass away. And so it's important that when we reflect on these things like course impermanence, we actually see it as a kind of experience that we will have to have. It's not just to sort of make us depressed or something like that, but we should really have a feeling about this, that this is something that we are going to have to face. It's not just something that sort of happens to other people. Over time, there are signs, like as you age, your hair gets white and things like that. It's a sign that you're going to have to die, but we somehow sort of like push that off as if like, oh no, not going to happen to me. And so when we it's an experience that when we witness these things, we shouldn't see it as if it's something happening to inanimate objects. For example, in India, before in Tibet, they would take out, if someone had died, they might take the corpse out at a very early time. And so you wouldn't really see that. But when we came to India, you would often see them carrying corpses, like people who have died, they would be carried out of the house. And often when it's like a person that had lived to an older age, they're sort of like banging on drums and making a whole lot of noise, sort of almost celebrating it because someone had a long life. Whereas someone who dies sort of in the prime of their life or dies in their youth, we see it as like such a waste. And this is, something that is really tragic. But the fact is that we are all going to have to face that kind of fate of having to die. And so when we see these things repeatedly, sometimes we can sort of become numb to them. Like, oh, it's just sort of like they're carrying rocks or dirt or something, instead of actually using that reflection of course impermanence as a kind of contemplation to change our own mind.
Oh yeah, then go chusenge de susu kasura. Mission da chushe roches che antis lapsunane chushe ne nyenge ne nyene ko ke homardo shegura. Timado go chus pajodi chudi pa gyurieten da malamna susu sheroches malana pajodi pa gyurieten tindretan dar shene merochera masua sheban mechashera. Koran chushe rosinane chushe. Timene Koran chulu shandara jine tiliako chulu di jorgu yu samshegdene mechorda. Soha korene sonene ma shegures. She de tanta shanashi. So cheshebe kapsu simbyun duyeda. Simda chane langdur jine mechi Koran da chane pa shegures. Shung tenla baba chigbu tandaru shegyo mar. Tilia sikyu pangayada chibtende jidan kwa zo che shegures. Siki kyang rabu tinte yong sam chi shibshi chawda shibshi dana niya koma daya so shawda. O ti diko, dili luju chi gudwa, karsura, namdru lachana yung gudwa. Nima chu shenge chi kishi podwa chi chungra katambe lamarwa. Niya chu jiwa sisi kishi chi chungira, katambe lamembri ya. Kuni chi di pe keba chimburedwa. Ne chu shyo de shida pengi medus mezul sem peng medus. Keshipodo chu shene ni ti mil pembo yongora. Ne keshipodo la condition te kares kebase. O de konge chu shede sheje nezu talan bebe wandu chene shegyo rese. So chichi reda mama reda hako et hako na dir mado kora simgi dent in the mara. O chi de semge 동제 대사르데 샘게 삼루탄달 파 조체데 아니 샘데 샘규단 데네 파조텔라 조소소 파조데 샘데 조주탄 텔테네 대단 델네 셰요레스 디엔디 펜도시아 용거르송도 야 어디 다지질라나.
So here, when it comes to the one who is giving a Dharma explanation, if they were asked by someone who wants to hear about the Dharma, then that is fine. But usually it's said that we shouldn't give teachings unless they are requested. If people haven't made that kind of request or haven't asked, you don't provide a sort of teaching. Now, in other traditions, there is a kind of, they feel the need to spread the teachings regardless of whether others have asked. But here again, the reason for giving teachings is in order to transform the mind, to actually work on our own mind, to examine our faults and work to overcome them. And so this is really the way in which one needs to teach. And so there is a story that is given in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand by Pabonka Rinpoche, where it explains there was a Geshe Potoa, one of the Kadampa masters, and another Geshe. And this other Geshe asked, why is it that my teachings don't seem to be benefiting people's minds in the way that yours do? And Potoa explained that you need to teach in a way that is not just sort of in order to gain knowledge of particular topics, like this is this and this is that, sort of listing out things in a way of just sort of learning facts, but one needs to teach in a way that is really meant to meet the minds of the people, to get at us working on their minds. So teaching is not just for gaining the kind of knowledge, but rather for one needs to teach in a way that is impactful to the people to be able to work on their own minds.
Oh yeah, tani shenge kulu ina rwa. Tam nyandra ta chi penjo ta chi tindre yongya ta tindre zo chen tindre tundal shekyo marese. Shen liya pena sam chamba ta zo so ra. Shen tungele chawa ta dewa tawya tundalya. Chamze samlu ta dembe kone shen la pena sam. Sanje chumdende sombe chöte. Shen liya chi shene telu ko simgi la pena sam. Mondo lami koban tawya ta tarba tamje kimbo tawya ke. Sabyoji simgi tendo pacha shagyo re sam. Sikba de masune sikdenji kyagu yo samsa. Te lapchenbo yin sam. Kechenbo shibuji yin sam. Penchenbo shibuji yin sam. O tinte chonde shekure sungutwa. Yeah.
And the one who is giving teachings, their motivation should not be to gain a good reputation or fame or anything like that, but rather they should be thinking, may this be of benefit to those who are listening. May these teachings bring a benefit to the minds of those who hear them. So the teachings of the Buddha are all for that purpose of being able to transform our minds. And so in this way, the one who is explaining should look at these teachings and think, this is these bring such a vast benefit of being able to put down the kind of imprints of seeds for others to be able to gain a good rebirth as a human or a god, or gain the kind of definite goodness of liberation. And so reflecting on the very great benefit of these teachings and wishing that they bring about those benefits, the one explaining should set their motivation.
Oh yeah, that's Yengezu Kulun de Samlatanda Tende Yangur Sungua. Shigabaka Sungua. Surne London Tanya Yambu Nurture Chowershas. Lo Sur Neba Sigora, Surne said. Surne London's Lodru than Dembas Quades Sungora. Leshe de Kunyanja de la Tanya Yabach Quades, Keju Sum Shagda. Surne London Tanya Yambu Nurture Chowershas. O Tende Consade. Che nyembe nödu rongwa re songwa sa che nyembe nyenge dige samlu tende chone nyangure se lo sur ne ba se tike chambare nambe che ri shegu na da su che shenge su ne so su nyende ni nyembe ina lo de tambu ne chagdang ge won de mandwa skore o ko sheje sama yego re samsa samda ya che sheno da ko tambu de shegu mare samsa so so go chora chin je tambu ne Nangba je o nga nangba sheje sama nangba shune sheje sama demba yin sam shenda je shesno de demba yo mare sam tende sam yo mare chera sozu kadul tangere je shen ko ge shin ba shen jigden kamlia kibu tambo mambo yorda chulu mambo yora ramda mambo so sha yora o tezu khande je na samza de je sosu pa chojil malo che tambo ni chojil lona ni shenda de shegde ne ko na dru mare 남중간 주치 시기도 메시 공부 내시 겸는 공부 장자 통구를 시기도 그 소소 저도 마도 현대 그 통구 말을 가르마 가르치는 다를 그 지시에 모두 tempo 말을 삼겨봐 양치디 많이 버시나 어디 tempo를 삼 소소 초소서 그때 tempo 인 삼기로 근데 매버시 거쳐 소소 거둘이야 지시에도 지시 컨테이너 삼사르시 로스우르 내봐 로카둘 내봐 초스말로 하지 거라 초실 발로네 때임을 신다 가르치는 tempo인 삼겨 말아 산지 좀 된데가 송구도 좀 된데가 송샤바 강가 tempo 만세세 소소 삼로 당딱제 치세 아니 대야분도 삼나 냠술랑 송구도 세제타로 에서신도세 대송에 대가르스네 lek바탈랑아이가 라와체 꾸치메 송라 세제타로 에서신도세 어스탈랑아 라와체 꾸치메세 라와체 매밤 셴지 개번 중메자세 네 야부레 삼 타치도 매바라체네 주죠 말에세라 셴지 개번 주전 셴지 고네 랑게 덤바 임바다 랑게 미리 임바다 지지 임바다 초신름 셰셰 딘데션이 양구 말에서 오라 과세 순엘 초성로에 다 sempat 매우스 구여도 어디도 가르쳐라 어떤데 지시하고 선비한테 저 단두르 야 되네 가르쳐래 로소르 내바치 거래서 손에 론덴스 로소르 내바면 가르쳐나 임버셔나다 멤버시셔나다 소소데 인사마도 퍼져들 예만이 딱제 연구 말아 소소 제바제에 가르치는 선고를 산제 소소 삼로지 다나 소소 신루라 지지레 세계에서 임바레 섬샤샤나 미시게 세르지 마도 요 말아 소소 삼로지 다제 과르라 다디 레세 마레스 셰르지 차르와 어디 인디가 소소 신고라 소소 신고도 소소 제바제 있어라 소소 제바제는 소소 시럽 요하르와 산제지 레 요하르와 만주 소소로 대peche 마셔지 샤샤위어마도 제베레 제제지 섬루다는 거 야르야르 요하라 그 야르르 매버시 메신게지 랑신지 주 같은 데시게 말와 어디 인디 가서래 순에 론데 소소 제바제 고레 소야데 소소 신고라 소소로도 개고라 마도 산제 좀 되된 알레 큐케 균주 제바진 다시시 송고요 말봐 소소소로도 개고요도 내 전부도 템버강에 버디 시트 그래서도 순에서 로저던 덴바지 거르마도 싫어 매네야 가르샤네 데임버레 삼데그래 생게데 가르샤네 데임버레 삼와 인데 위기레 삼 소소 삼로게 땅고마 인데 위기레 삼 인기레 삼 샤샤라 에네티케요 말 로저던 덴바지 거르 스네론데 돈이에서 돈이에서 거라 띵게 생구여 삼사지 디케 신부인게 생구여 삼사지 거라 신도 매네 거 녀네 거 시다 대기 말해 bên 신바르지 콜레 신가 답이다 지메도 답이다 진데 콜시 년도게 미시나 시게 신베 콜레 셰게요나 시디 리베시라 메시 시디 리베 오시다이나 코 신베 콜데 진데 콜 신도게 메네 년년베나 시디 도나시오 마르코 다 대셔 시디 섭소지 년그라 년도 돈데 콜 지나 시디 야고 셰거레 리베 메게딜야 코 도나시거라 전이 시디 셰시 뭐 지셰셰서 세고마도 그때니 맨날 제도도 산내 샵되어다 보스 내 주마제다 보스 내 카부바다 보스 숨을 빼쳐요 봐내 주마제세데 너제지 나로랴 주마연나 차다 로소르만 내지 담부내 성진제 년계지나 그걸 좀 쇼사를 해라 내 주마제다 보래 디나를 세로 제제네 그 차다게 제제까지 셔야지 차로 견제시를 거라 팬도용 말을 쓴 거라 전에 가서는 내가 부바스레데 와 근데 야카 부샤네 티날 마치 네체티나 치달루나 만루마도 코실로 샤르마도치 시르메나 코티 용마레셔라 시르메나 콘주투 마르와 내가 부바타버데 어치셰도 셰치우 삼사테마도 소소삼당 마르와 내가 부바타 내가 부나세 야가르지 말루나 나로데케 요 마르도 야, 너 주머제다 말에 너 샵도 왔다 보세. 아, 샵도 왔다 보세는 그 돈이 매나. 네, 아니 네 남산 로셔 샵도는 월마도 코로나 레게고 말아. 소소 삼론나 레게고 말에 저래. 저자 뇌 샵도하다고 뇌 지마셔다고 뇌 카보바다고 근데 꽤 많이 와셔 아니 약보셔지 순회론대 저 냐분의 지자와르셔스 냥고레 송고도 사제진데 가서 렉바르 랍도 녀라 일라 송시에 송고도 렉바르세 랍도 녀라 일라 송시에스 어떤 냥게 저거에 대해서 냥고요라 어디체 리버셔 다 가리는 만나 어디인데 산지 송베 살루장베 돌리아로 테바다 삼바 곰바름지 체네 내공문도 라미코반 토바르체 미가 추파로 개와 추트네 라미코반 토바르체 대한 대sam기 메셔바 아니 퀄리티도 타르바치고 대체도 아니 착당 방고 세바 방고로 당지 방고래 착당 몽섬시고도 어디 테바 삼바체네 테다림기 파네 내가 뭔도 라미코반다 테네 림기 타바다 탐지기 베코바치네 토바르샤스 대체도 chuying이 있으면 굴로세다네 세버쇼서 아텐드르 야
So then those who are listening to the teachings, as Arya Deva has said in his 400 verses, should listen with an unbiased, intelligent mind that is wanting to hear, that sort of striving to implement whatever one is hearing. That kind of disciple then is a suitable vessel for listening to the teachings. So this first term, like having an unbiased mind, we shouldn't be under the control of attachment and aversion. Like we shouldn't think, oh, well, I'm Buddhist, so everything that these Buddhists say, like it is that way. I'm just going to accept everything that they say because I have attachment to this side. That's not the proper way to listen. Or on the other hand, like looking at the texts of other traditions and saying, you know what, these are not Buddhist, so they have nothing valuable to say whatsoever. We should have a kind of open, curious mind. There are many different teachings that are beneficial, and we should approach them with that kind of non-bias. We shouldn't sort of have like, for example, if you're wearing blue glasses, everything is going to look blue to you. You're going to be tainted by those glasses that you are wearing. And so we shouldn't sort of fall into this kind of bias where we think like, oh, well, this isn't a Buddhist text, so this is the way it is. I just accept it. We need to think about it for ourselves. This kind of having an openness to things where we don't come at them with already preconceived ideas of like, this is going to be good or this is going to be bad based upon our own attachment. This is the first kind of quality. So we should examine these teachings in relation to our own mind. Again, as the Buddha has emphasized repeatedly, you should take up my teachings after examining them well, seeing them to be beneficial, not just out of respect. As he explains, we should examine them as you would gold in the way that you want to make sure that that's actually gold. We should take up these teachings and look up at the various reasonings. We shouldn't take them up out of respect. We shouldn't say like, oh, well, my teacher said this, or people of my kind said this, or my particular lineage said this. That's not the sort of proper reasoning to adopt something, to have a belief in it, but rather we need to think for ourselves. And that begins first with an unbiased mind, not coming at the teachings, approaching them with attachment or aversion, and also having a kind of intelligence. We need to understand them for ourselves. If we're only able to say, oh, well, so-and-so said this, that's not really an understanding. That's not really knowledge, but rather our knowledge of something comes through our own reflection. So we all have this kind of Buddha nature. We all have the ability to think and reason and develop our wisdom. It's only due to a sort of lack of use that we haven't improved it, that we haven't developed this, but we have the capacity to improve and develop it. It really is a matter of working to expand our own intelligence, to really use reasoning and use logic in order to be able to say it is this way based upon a proper kind of reasoning, not just remaining in this, well, it's probably like that, or it's probably like this. We need to be able to recognize what is and isn't based upon reasoning and logic, and that requires having a kind of intelligence, and we all have that capacity, that we can improve that more and more. And so then we need to last have a sort of a desire to learn, a drive to learn, a striving to want to put this into practice. So when we are listening, we should be someone who is wanting to know. It's not just sort of like we're sitting there not really paying attention or not thinking about it. Like think if there's someone who is, say, very intelligent and they're listening to a lecture about farming and they don't really care. They're not really paying attention to it. And on the other hand, you might have someone who's not as intelligent, but they really want to know this because this is important for them. They're going to really take up what is said in that lecture, whereas the other person is sort of like not even paying attention, not even there. As it's explained elsewhere, we should abandon the 3 faults of a vessel, being like a vessel with a hole in it, being like a dirty vessel, or being like one that is upside down. So here, the sort of dirty vessel is being like biased, having attachment or aversion for a particular side. And so that's the kind of unbiased mind with which we should approach the teachings. And then we shouldn't be like a vessel that's turned upside down. Like if you are approaching it without any sort of intelligence or thinking, this is like, nothing's really absorbing, nothing's really getting in, no matter how much you're hearing, nothing is getting into that vessel. And then finally, there is the sort of like wanting to know things. If we don't have that kind of drive to actually learn what is being taught, then we can hear it, but it's like we're a vessel with a hole in it. It's not really going to remain. So as is stated elsewhere in a different verse that talks about sort of listening well and attentively with this kind of drive to actually implement the teachings, these are the sorts of qualities that we should have described in different ways. So here again, thinking that we are going to, at the very least, abandon the 10 non-virtues and engage in the practice of the 10 virtues, abandoning harming others in order to be able to gain a good rebirth as a human or a god. But going beyond that, striving to get rid of our attachment and aversion and ignorance in order to gain that state of definite liberation. And even beyond that, gain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings with this kind of attitude of actually, I'm going to implement these teachings as much as I am able to. We should set a motivation for listening to the teachings of the Buddha.
Oh yeah, 당한 주대로다 가서라. 지된 거바 볼라 따바세스도와. 뭐 대가서라. 지된 거바 보 지된 거바 지된스네 거 내진 지된다. 주진 지된스니 요라. 사시딜은 잠불인데 더번에 사시딜이야. 내진 지된스요라. 주지 심전스도 대 롱저바 보 간사도 졸라 심미베 간사도 졸라. 아니 가서라. 주지 심전 롱저바 본 지된스거든. Jigden ko keji te sama juran rongere soran jiweran shinchare. Ene nyembe yang jigwe bachires ko tunghe juran shincharawa. Koye choji duba sonza te ko pangwe chi. Ra te da trego bachire te ora. O te sonza ko keji ginji nyembe yang jigbar chiba imbe na. Ni jigden ese. Ko tunghe demba sonza tunghe gishi chenge sonza ko te da trego bachire te ora. O ten goba bo se te soabo. Jiden goba bo roa wonju chembola soba o dan jiden songe niba yo soba chi wonja chazan yunga chi yores o ti kande chi yo me le cheba chi yora ti chulu mambu chi jiden goba bo yoba kelen gore mambu chi meba kelen gore no o ti kol shera ya.
So here we have arrived at this section, the analysis of the divine creator. And so here, this is investigating then when we refer to, and here in the English, it isn't exactly put the word jikden, which is sort of like this world or this universe, this environment, referring both to the kind of external environment as well as the beings within it, the beings who enjoy the various things within it. And so here, the 2 syllables of that, the jik refers to this kind of being momentary, disintegrated disintegrating moment to moment, having the nature of impermanence. And then the second syllable 10 is referring to sort of being the support or the foundation for all of the various kinds of sufferings that one experiences. So here, the sort of the world, one could say, or the universe can be comprised of the kind of external environment as well as the beings that inhabit it. And for many different traditions, they assert that there is some kind of creator, some divine being who has the sort of power, this omnipotence to be able to produce the entire world. So there are those that accept the kind of thought of a creator as being or a creator of this world, and there are those that then do not accept such a creator. So here, this is investigating or analyzing the kind of idea of a creator.
Oh yeah. Dan duje nam ken sum danga le chungwa tenjin rebar chungwa sumba nam le sikdwa duje samma derwa ne jin jigden da simje gin jigden ge duje samma tamje sungora ken sum danga le chungwa sheyora nga le chungwa sheyora do kapso ken sum le chungwa da nga le chungwa ken sum le chungwa ta ta ma bu sheyba karsora di yunan di yung sen di ke beshen di ke kande maru be ken do ji nam se di yunan di yung se kyudan ke de ne ba yung su sawa de yunan de de ke yung gre se di ma do shen ji ya ne ba yung su so so na di yunan ne ba yung su kyu jin yung su so ne ba yung su so be ne ba de so ba de yunan de de ke yung gre se tel ya di yunan ke de ma do di yunan ya Manaya, Cheba Bochig, Kiguye, some Latane, Comba, Shane Sigora, Dinganjo, you are maybe can't let any choice of you. Kunungi, you are Cheba Bokel and Gesoga, Kunda, the Kento Suguna, Tesukanga Tindu, Sugi, some Soab, some demana, young took my days of Gato. Penapumba so ever sat. Chi lakcha da tezu tsama kubar kanga yobache songe kansa chi ta nire sogo samlatan masuna ni pumba sotu mardo o de nashi ne jin ji den de da chu gi simje de sun da mende samate o ku da ke de chi yo na ya te tsam ji de mares chiba bo de 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 chi ko yen di so yen di ko yesam samlatan suna ni tu ke te mane o mares sigorno o de sigora kelia Yo maybe can't let any choice sigore. Cheba maybe can't let any choice sigore. Cheba maybe can't let any choice. Cheba maybe can you maybe can't let any choice. Do you know the Jones? Dicky Bessin, Dicky said the Talta Mabushera. Dicky Bessin, Judy and Tabachi quarters. Tender Shagora. Chirubaina Tawa. Chitso Stambu Judy Tabashadoa. Tambu Jutawa Mashan Tele Kushan. Trandu Yomar, Consu Samlunarda. Oh, Tindico, Tagbachisha, and a taken Debukanga Kivasigora, Nambachin Yomara. Tagbasidu, you are missing a Tabasigora. Kangarashin sing me about Tela Canum Tachis. Jide on Draga Tabasiority, Queen the Tawaris Tangachile, Tabasi was written to Tawaris or any money or a lot catching, but she's a tongue, but the Sigra. The Koti Queen. Meet the Tawaris in Gisarishira. Tawaris Chachan Street, you then on that Tawa Telesigora. Then show now Tawa de Telesigomare. Kangiran Jimmy Batella Canamche. Kishi, Judan King of a Jindo and Juando Yorko. Juando Gang, Ginchi, the Shashi, teach you the Tirmedare, Regulated to Yara. When you know Koti, Kishi, Jindo, Ramanashi Omara. And as a mean message of Gina. Tambuki do nature condition. Tinjurkin during Jugisha, my nation, Damambuti, Anthony, Ayon Micha, Anthony, Achimbuch, Juja, Tantaba the Tegdo. Change the thing I met to Tanta Tegmato. You want to Kishi, Jukin, Jugisha, and Drogoramato, Nima the Tanta Teg and the Tane, pushing you to Tanta Yokorayo Marwa. Tindu Casora. The Yunan Dijun, the Kibation Digi. Juti Keba Sonsan Drebu the Kigi or Ese. True Takwachi and Drebu Kia Marese. The United Nation, the Kibas and Digis, without what to make anything. 주 따바시랑 여바시 되게 요 말에 지소세 따바시 되게 강하게 버려서 되게 따바시어래 되게 강하게 버려서야 알아. 아니 뒤에 샤미 따바요래 대소 강하게 버려서야 알아. 근데 규칙 장작에 대부 따바시기 때문에 깨요 말도. 미다바도 맥jal했더니 좋아서. 오래 알레더니 질람나. 너 티스트 랍션 수바데. 되는 데진 되기면 간데 마리베 ken진 도시에서도 네베견했더니 마릭 바텔레드니 니반 도시 지르 도시 숨바 남시 지르시 투모 많이 밖에 네바 연계게 주되게 제부디 깨고 그래서 그 상마게 미다바 연계 주상면 제부 상마게 말와 신도 암데시 깨고나 암 깨지 투모 많이 베 년령 주지다 될 투모에 아니 렌지시 겐시 되게 깨고요 또 오예 깬숨라더니 좋았을 때래도 야
So here then, turning to page 33 in the English, in the analysis of a divine creator, then investigating what kind of divine creator would exist or not exist. So here in the second section of the previous chapter, I gave citations regarding composite phenomena having the characteristics of arising dependently from either 3 or 5 conditions. So here, as was explained sort of previously, when we are analyzing this kind of divine creator, again, there are those that would assert that this world, the kind of container and the beings that are contained within it are created through the thought or the intention of some sort of creator deity. Whereas for Buddhists, that is not the way that they would assert things to arise. And so as we saw in the previous sort of section, there are different kinds of sort of conditions, one could say, or qualifications to the sort of cause that gives rise to things when we talk about dependent origination. So first is that, like, if the causes and conditions are complete for the arising of a particular effect, there's nothing needed beyond that. So if the causes and conditions are assembled, then the result will come forth. There's no need for the sort of intention of a creator or the thought of a creator. On those who do assert some kind of creator deity would say, like, well, think about a pot. When a potter is making a pot, they need to have some sort of intention, some sort of motivation. That's how that thing takes that particular shape. So you can't make a pot, for example, without that kind of intention. And they would say so too is the case for all phenomena within this world, the sort of environment and the beings contained within it. But here, Buddhists would say the first sort of quality or the sort of first condition is that this cause does not need to entail the thought of a creator. Rather, if all of the causes and conditions are complete, that is all that is necessary. And so this is expressed in the line of the sutra itself, where it says, because this exists, this occurs. So when we have all of the proper causes and conditions, then the result will come about. There's nothing else that is needed. And so secondly is expressed in the next part that says, because this arose, this arises. So here, this negates some kind of a permanent cause. The cause of things that are impermanent themselves are impermanent. There are certain philosophical schools that would say they think there needs to be some sort of a lasting or a permanent kind of a cause that brings forth everything, whether it's like a primal substance or time or whatever it may be. They would assert that this cause needs to be permanent. Well, that's not possible according to Buddhists. We sort of, within the world, what is referred to as permanent is actually the sort of continuity of things. There may be a continuity of sort of similar types of moments where it appears as though something is permanent, but really there is nothing that is permanent, in the sense that all of these composite phenomena change moment to moment, are constantly undergoing change. If we think about it, we are here now, but we began in our mother's womb, where we were gestating for several months, and we were changing constantly. And then as a child, we were changing, and we grew and continue to change. So if we were not constantly changing, if we weren't momentary, then you would still have to be that child that you were before, for example. So this second sort of condition is that the cause is not permanent. Nothing like a sort of principal nature, primary primary nature, time, or permanent partless particles can serve as a cause. That cause needs to be impermanent, as it says, because this arose, this arises. And it continues saying this is called dependent arising. That is dependent on ignorance. Conditioning factors occur. And so this expresses the third kind of condition that is necessary, is that a cause has the ability to bring forth a particular result. For something like a fruit tree, like a peach tree, you plant that particular seed, and that is the kind of uncommon cause, the unique cause of that particular tree. And then there are common conditions like water and fertilizer and heat and so forth. But a cause needs to have the ability to bring forth a particular result. So this is the sort of three conditions of the cause. 고기민 두 개.
뭐야?
No.
다케 숨다 나래 중에서라. 걔가 수도 티가 니이래와. 주다 제발에 중에 생이셔라. 대여난 대중수도 주대여나 저비기그래서 교매는 저비기 말을송으로. 근데 솔루점에 더 값이야. 달래 마이 샬래 마이 니가래 마이 교매발에 잠메게 돼서 교매발에 기 말을송고도. 그래서 교매발에 때니 겨 말을 티치라. ene tabo mebe kya le tene chunga sharya tabo mebe kya le tene chunga rawa we tabo mali sigra ta kya yena jigden cheba potel mali sigra tabo sigra je rawa do chi tabo chenge chi wang yu chen che thongge chi ran chi che no tende yara tende yomar tabo mebe kya le tene chunga sha o nga sungu yara o je ka sara tadi kanga salu jambe de kapsu rol ma shi yongura nga le choya tenjin debar juma changi chando songba namle sen do kapsu chinagi jigden de sama ken sumla tene choya changi cheres ken nga le tene choya changi cheres o tende song sha chero dina ne jigden cheba bu lo yo mebe ken le tene choya se ken nga na yo mebe ken le tene 디요나 디종세데 교진 상마 상소는 교진 내가 상소는 데부데 끼르마도 딜리치 깨나 삼삼마게나 삼삼 콜홀라 왕게 깨와다 메깨와 깨반도 말을 송거라 교진 내가 용 소바는 데부다 메사게 오거래 교진 내가 좀 마사나 데부지 말해서 어딘도 가서라 요아 메베켄레 중아 스네다 제베켄레 중아 제바 메베켄레 때네 중아스 어디 걸려 원에 로스 때네 체메데 고난일을 소버급 송샤가 되주수 단이 세긴세거든 어야
Yeah. So then, as it says, I gave citations regarding composite phenomena having the characteristics of arising dependently from either 3 or 5 conditions. So the 2 additional conditions qualifying those sorts of causes, again, as it says, if this occurs, if this exists, this occurs. And this again, it can indicate the sort of not needing the thought of a creator or the intention of a creator, but also that things are not causeless, that they don't come about without some kind of a cause. So if this exists, if there are the proper sort of causes and conditions, that will bring about the occurrence of a result. You can't have some sort of result occur without a cause. And then we have this sort of, there's not an autonomous cause, one could say. So again, like the idea of a creator deity that has the sort of ability on their own without relying upon anything else to bring forth all varieties of phenomena, that is not acceptable as a cause. A cause is, there's nothing that has that sort of autonomous or ability to bring forth without relying upon anything else. So again, all of the kind of inner and outer world that we can speak of arise from causes and conditions. They're proper causes and conditions. And again, it's not that they don't have a cause. If this exists, this occurs. And it has to be the proper sort of causes. But it's not as though if we are lacking this kind of intention or motivation, things will not come about. Again, we don't need the sort of intention, the thought of a creator deity in order to bring them about. And so we'll look more closely at this, particularly based upon the kind of description in Shantarakshita's Compendium of Reality.
Tindreji sogudo, tindreji kogudo, samsam komba shengechi korese, timene yungu marese, tawanda chiro. Tatanda dilia dire ko marese, chukingi neba yonso zoso na, ane ke yungu rese. Ti judan kengi neba zo mazolan drebu ke machi tagri mato, chukingi neba yome ta tindre wangi drebu ke marese yorma. Ti wole solu jambe deo kapsungudwa. Sabiyan de nyamdo tagi nyubu kebar chedo nyamdo mesam sigora. Kanji sabiyan da kankal cha tende yana cho tome marikbe ne tagi kase niban duchi gile kebar chawa nyamdo mesam se. Samgu maru koran neba zo son drebu ke hungure se. Neba zo mazol tawar mato che kulung la judilen neba yume da tendel tawu mata tenda yuwa mebe ke. Kulung ki chukbali tegu mara sapsu se. Timu maybe nyele da Tele lenji chige chinge timu e kyutu sansona neba yo sosona drebu ke yongurese. Ki shegi yora, shicha tenle pabgu yora. Chipabu yo senge te tenle pabgu, chipabu mesi chi shegi doa. Ina te soso da simgyu da karen drawa yorese na. Chipabu yo senge zo mancha Koran lo ke shagi yora. Kashi kyo nga chi yo mare. Sendi kyang kyare. Kaina chipabu lo ke shagi, chipabu yore Koran karina. Chendure Koran wancha yore san pa loke shagdwa. Pajote loke na karine chemata sosul ti keshira mendwa. Nuba mendwa. Ta nangba ti mare. Soso kecha wachi ure sigwara. Chebabu kecha mare soso kecha ware. Tome maru e kune halani iban tujik le sange sani yungudwa. Soso kosum je samlu tanda ta le sange le tene drebu yungure ese. Rangi so ese. Ita hakogore, tin drene simgyudan drare. Shenji liba rawa chone tia yakbode rawa kora lo kesar chiwara. Ta tetsa mara shente chiya yuna te yakbusha chiwara kange. Yakbu kya suuru mato tubu sogu marwa tsawa yunge chi ingira. Kongbe rawa yube wancha chiwara sigwara. Rawa wancha mebacha koran lele te goyne ni lele tene chukgu yor mato. Koran rawa ki chiba pochi rigyo mara. Kendo soso de kesha buyenba nangbe. Tangi dagen kwenye de sugda. Shende sushin kwenye kyursi. Le tangen bachebar tangi dag bambi. Dagi zo dagi kikwe. Chishi tela zo kyursi. Sa soso kosum bi choba sangbo tangen ba nye tele tene mawa bada tade titu yungu yuba tele ishi chewara. Soso samla tanda kane keji sheda, lugi choba sheda, di sangbo tangen bechane drebu chendila titu yongeta mahobala titu yang kyutso tirese range shimbu shibu chimba susu chikoba kunjo yore sanje captain baba acho troops ne sole capgre hada me ko ba toba chigdwa sanje ke te gyure songudwa tina shin chebe ne ngazu te kop topgudwa ina te che zo de soso de doa che kunjo de doa che kunjo de soso che ko che de doa che soso zo ro mengi peshan mamut alen roswa michi shiye ge jigba yoba che ene nane naso de che ta meba keba che sa duro ta ko kanga shingire sam do naso kare shi ke o da kera naso dire sha men de dan disana dragrin de dan de chi ge yo marse Cholam labgura men sai labgura. Labsuna ko labatele chi jo tanga te che ursa. Me de soso sagudwa. So me masani peng marwa. I'm just asking because na me the kangalene never karsere. Me ne rabdu sambi chushe chuji tuni anda machenase. Never made you give a top at the dog and any sort of munitions. Me the lanes shashana give a car in a sosuke many digmarto, so the chequeredwa. Just so soredo, should the soredo, should the rank tibunki or tugudo. O titan dalia sunguara, tiakogura. Oh, tai kunjola soba tintel soatene. Sonam di sosa, teletene, sosun devatruet in the young Sonam dembe mi sambanam jatu sermata. So chiba the sosore samsa. O ti jene ti hakoko yardo. Ya, tichilan.
So here, whether it is Buddhists that assert there is no kind of divine creator, but rather that the sort of results occur due to the coming together of all the kind of necessary causes and conditions, and those who assert that there's some kind of creator deity, they're both trying to sort of determine the nature of various objects of knowledge. Now, for Buddhists, they examine and see that, well, results arise when all of the kind of necessary causes and conditions come together. When there is this sort of seed or substantial cause that has the ability to give rise to a particular effect, that is how things come into being. It has nothing to do with the sort of desire to generate that or having a will of a divine creator. So here again, they would assert that all things arise due to karma. All of the kinds of necessary conditions have to come together to bring something about. There's no way that a particular deity can just change that or do things based upon the kind of way that they want. So here, for those that do think that there is some kind of a deity, they put that forth as a reason. Again, we can see, like, for example, those that deny past and future rebirths, they put forth certain reasons, and maybe they're just sort of assumptions, but that allows them to place their hope in a different kind of a being. Whereas the sort of focus within Buddhism is on the individual. The individual is extremely important because you are the main one. You're the main one sort of responsible for your own happiness and suffering. You can put your sort of hope in another in terms of the three jewels as being the teacher, but you can't actually just look to them to do it for you. Rather, as the Buddha has said, you are your own master. You are sort of responsible, and you are the one who is really the witness to the good and bad actions that you have done. So the kind of focus is not on putting your hope in something external or someone external, but rather recognizing that you have to be accountable for the actions of your three doors, your body, speech, and mind. The sort of good and bad things that you do are the main causes of your future happiness and suffering. And while you can sort of look to the three jewels, they are only able to tell you what it is that you should avoid and what it is that you should engage in. There's nothing that they can do to protect you just based upon sort of making requests. Although you are able to accumulate merit in that way, it is really up to you to implement things. Again, as the common example is given, if you have someone who is dying and they're in great fear and they go to the best kind of physician they can find, they may have real trust in this doctor. They think whatever they say is going to be the right advice. And maybe this doctor gives them medicine and gives them advice and sends them home. Well, if the person doesn't actually take that medicine, there's no way that they're going to get better. No matter how great the physician may be, no matter how much faith they have in that physician, if they don't take the medicine themselves, then there's no way that they can blame anyone but themselves. So as a verse from the sutra says that you have to take the medicine yourself. If, say, a physician gives advice and medicine to a patient, but the patient doesn't take it, it's not the fault of the medicine. It's not the fault of the physician, but rather it's the fault of the patient that hasn't hasn't actually implemented these instructions. So again, we need to recognize that the Buddhist sort of attitude is that the individual is primary in the sense that they are accountable or responsible for the kinds of actions of their body, speech, and mind that are the causes of their own future happiness and suffering.
Oh yeah. That the Chimbura. Then I can be better China. Yoanga Machimayo Maresigora. Cindy Kanya Resegora. That Jawachimada Namache, Tito da Landorche, the church, the Zuti Das, some among the Kama, the Dachangiche Dasus, or Mount the Teba you get to do, Joangama the Chimaka Shagri, the Dachangi Trumchi, Trum Kasia, Dasha Mocha, Trumri Mato to your Marestera. Jamalekbar Church saw the Sendilia, Kare, Tana, Karechana, what Tikibuche, Yabuche, Shase. Jidechima Keshe to the Tumbre Ese, the last amount the Teba to the Shashar, Mother Maresido. Otina she Chulula, Chindimato Janga, the Chima Maveshe, Chindikanya, and Chulo Yora. Oh, Tituina, Chindida Yabuchi Dalia, Kunjo Pita, Gapkuyara, Kunjo Rawachi, and Kunjo Chindi Yabusodora. Chimatangama, Chimandra Kishkayomar. Nangba mare, church at the Joachima Page church at a mother, Cindy to the church at Shaggy Mare. Joachima, so some have shag mares at Cindy Sopo de la de Resimdic, Thomas and Drudes, young Joa Langares ora. O take your lance at the Joa Sambola at and Gambala New Yores, Nesonda, Juliara. Muti the Titan Daliata church, Joanne Joa Tungele Tendo Tarbata, Saji Shan, Tungele Tarwachin, remember Mabushuchi ora, or Tende, you had to Dalia, Shishagi ora. But send the Kanya to the Shaggy Marin, Dributo, the Kimachima Pensit on the Shagora. Church and Sendelia, so Landoche, Mabuchi, the Sendele Pengiora. Sendele Drama, but in the Radio Mara. Some time at the church at the Migo upon Kevachu to Champagne, Kondunga, Jetrado, Sortana, Sendela, Social Pember, and Nami Pengari Kanga, Chisonium don't do single Pember, they don't go some Jodoa. Sendela Pengare. In a Drebu, the Sendis over Mara, Kawashimet and that you and the Lamdan Drebu, and Namsa Kashabushida Yungora. The Kawandi Kanga and Anita Chibabol Shida, some of the Yungora, that is not Seri Bagasaya, Toya Koya. Kangi Shibuchi, you did that, and Robert get you now something to get a. That is that in a Kanga and Bembelo Kanga Swagate, Cherry Bagasha at the Drigimato. That should have Koya Medu some chuk, Medu some such handra. When you send it on that Chugumara, send it on Dalia, she would on that church Yomara. Send the Cholum Yawache, the Bunkiruchi, Chambaza, Combo Signore, take a written that Joachima Penje. You remember some Danchiora. The send the lay pengiore, chisel the pengiore, so the Joachimet that she would say the Kazaya Jachina, Sindilico, Sayatu Yabura, Kuiora. Negab Yakangesia, Negab Yatoet and Dalakuiora. Kasangazumabu love Samba, sorry, but love Gurese, Tenica, sorry, but love Gurese, Tala love Gures, Chanju Samba Sungudwa. Sai Yabaya Satombu left Haneta Zula love Gursungudwa. Tandeshinga Davianja, sorry, better let us do. Miko who can hit and I'll change you some button del child some Gursungudwa. So you remember some Tangura, what they Shida Lamdan Drevu Namshata, she said, Nezu Kachim Bushet, the Tikanka Yungora. Send it Chibut and any Shida Kachim Bushiraka Shell Mother. Can be Bushet and Double Yorene. Kanka counter to Chit, Mother, some Mother says, Shirendora. Oh, this you Lamna. This on the Tantan de Tukanga Shade. You remember some Tanduni, Sabata Gacho, the Mambuchi shared the Yungora. Oh, send him Mother Kyongachimana and the Quakamendo. Yeah, this is.
So here, this is important that, for example, like the Charvakas, those who assert that we only have this life. They would say that there are no past and future lives. There's a verse that encapsulates this where they talk about how, oh, these scholars talk about past and future lives, but they can't actually like prove them in any way. The sort of past lives are like dreams, and the future lives are like stories. There's just this life. And so for them, they are really looking for, they might assert some sort of a deity or something that is able to protect them and give them what they need in this life alone. And that might be how they see Dharma or religion, is really just the things that are able to benefit them in the here and now. Now, according to Buddhists, that would not qualify as being Dharma, because Dharma is really to think beyond just this life. The kind of continuity of our subtle consciousness will continue into future rebirths. And with the sort of knowledge that we are going to have to take rebirth, either in the lower realms or the higher realms, or we can create the kind of causes to gain liberation, or potentially gain the state of Buddhahood, where we are able to help lead others to liberation. We're thinking beyond just this life. The reasons that one practices Dharma, engages in these kinds of practices, are in order to think about those future lives, think long term, and the kind of results that will come not just in this life. The reality is that when we practice things like love and compassion and sort of satisfaction and those sorts of things, they are going to help in this life. They're going to be beneficial for us and those around us, for society in general, but the result that we're really looking for may be lifetimes away. So here, again, there are those who might say, look to scientists. They're really just focused on this life, and they look and they say, well, can they provide us with all that we need? Can they give us like all the food that we need, or extend our lives, or those sorts of things? And really their focus is just on this life. That kind of attitude is really no different from the Charvaka sort of attitude, that there's no past and future lives. We're just looking for some sort of place to put our hope that can benefit us in this life alone. And so in contrast, a Buddhist view would say things like love and compassion and developing wisdom are beneficial in this very life. They benefit us, they benefit society, but the real results will come in future lives. So it's not to negate the importance of things like science. Again, as we talked about previously, that it is very important to have the kind of knowledge of how to alleviate the temporary sufferings of beings, how to provide them with what they need. There are all kinds of arts and sciences that bodhisattvas train in order to be able to alleviate those kinds of temporary sufferings. But here, knowing the sort of base, the path, and the result, we are thinking as Buddhists beyond just this one kind of life. Whereas when one is only focused on the sort of constraints of this one life, and say, look to scientists for all their help, there's really no difference between that and a kind of Charvaka or sort of a hedonist view.
Oh yeah, 당연히 되로죠. 더 로베 쇼츠 제베 제메데 코네니 되베 츠루 제베 쇼라. 셴디라시다 쇼라. 어디 제메데 코네니 되바세 따도 상가라스 베치쇼라. 어디 날리르 송샤세 디롱장게와라. 저베 군지 초당 제세. 다 동번이 계셔요르노. 라마도 저베 동바. 아니 저바 군지 초당 제세. 现在到我们一打说，我就是这边关于说的这个东北那边，大没把到的县，你去了把了说把这个到头嘛的时候了，现在到我们一打是，他们让我都住不是，让我呢住不是，讲是到刚才一年这去看的一年这，让我都住不是，让我呢住不是，俺就同那些电把这些，电把住不开的给我呢，他东北那些地俺就同那些电把嘛这些。 라와도 주바 라원에 주바요 말에서 레파 마에게 차실 때에 따고랬다 딸마무도서 주바 권지 초다저 생기 똑바 많이 다스 라와토라 메템바스 다 가갈리네 팅엘이야 남샤카데시 쳬바이나 라와토바데세 라와토바데 딜스가라 리치세조 리치체마시 리치기 베체 임바체 숑 임바체 제바부 강사가 제바 많이 버셔 그런 랑중 그 중에서 거라 어디 라와 토블라 메테바스 참 대가서래 르지시스라 르지시 르지기 숑도 강가데 제바부 현다가 제바부 제말 그런 랑신기 뭐비 내주다 템바 중앙에서 거 자치 중에서 다 디나 셰바 참만 템바에서 거라 딜레 때네 아니 지셰 마동아주 왕비 유련 대바 소다 제로를 잘해서 통대에 무슨 통해야 돼 가지고 하고라 디 많이 게던다 지셰고나 르지시날 가르셰도 때티 뭐에 내슈날 거라 기비 마체베 시그레 랑신기 뭐비 내주다 템바 거라 치고라랑 루브레 라와도 주바셰 주레 딱바레 소야 매바 텐데시 주데라 다 디나 셰바 참만 템바에서 딜레 때네 셰고레서 거라 산제 좀 되게 때지 레버리 중하다 지만부 송부터 가가 르지기 송도 줄 때네 ene somba girwa se gyara saje machembe kondo ene da riji khelinge zo peche riji nal sheba che mato tilin deva chi she chi yo mardo o di mare se gyara rawa to la meten bas rawa to ba te rawa ma takba yenge ge chiktina she je sama temba yenge ge ene gar so riji shi til temba mare til ten somba mare so da metemba dola pemba je shi be se ene Tende tongba nyeda tenjin drebar jungade garjen sunggoresana droa simje shandalia landur gine chima chishin shin chido pembe chido sunggorese dola pemba jeshi bese negab lami ko bantavet nele tarwa tamje kimba towe tondalia tende gicho sunggorese gora tende yana chungi kone kwa kuju sunggudwa ani tendo chuchi sunggora tarwa tabju sunggudwa mondo lami ko bantubade sunggora 어디 돌아편반자시 베세 개바 장미 민요에세 개바 망볼이야 메시지니 말해 개바 망볼은 지대 검차가 지차지 신게 망볼이야 아니 심제 탐지가 전달에 잠바다 세외군을라네 현대 주반제네 단도 상계 된게서 거라 개바 장미 민요에세 투지 신부 다규래 투지 신부 당이죠 심제 탐지 동네에 들어와 다가 자섬 대체도에 랑도르기 내를 저거가 강가 심바치기 탈심바치네 네 심제때 달라 때네 뒤쪽어치기 공부라 투지 친구 당이도 줘봐 대진 대버는 좋아하네 강가 송바 마외 쳐서 땡지 대버는 좋아 송바레스 다 대진 대버는 좋아 송에들 네 땜바 네가 연구하라 주다께라 대진 대버는 좋아 군주배 쉬다 대진 대버는 좋아 쳐나 라완도 주배 동바게 담배 쉬었어요. 담배 얘기 남샤티 거라. 대신 대바를 좋아하네. 강게 송바 마외 쇼스. 마와 남게 담바스 텐데 송바 차네. 담발라 남에 바다. 그러와. 텐데 담배 차네 상게 송데 송 라나 메바세. 강게 송바 마외 쇼. 군제들의 차차네. 등이 남래 도와자. 저절 차차네. 세메테 코난이 예값소 내주 망보시 뭐 내주 뭐 내주다 템바게 뭐 내주다 템베 내다 망보시 오라 어디난 수투지 세기에 송거라 다티날 치르베겐데 바다 지금 남벤데 바다 백강 망보시 줘라 도르 샤송 샤세 어디난에 다단단 가서 대수셔야 돼 요함에 백견을 때네 좋아 지금 제법 매바데 도에나네 어디 거든데마 아니 세기에 서르시라 야
So here then, explaining from Shantarakshita's compendium of reality, here the Geshe-la also gave the Sanskrit name, but this work then begins by praising the Buddha by saying, free from the mass of all elaborations. So here, this is again, this is referring to emptiness, the lack of kind of intrinsically established phenomena, referring to selflessness or emptiness. And this is a condition not known by others. So non-Buddhists do not realize the way that things are in terms of their lacking this kind of elaboration or not being intrinsically or truly established. And it continues saying, and not dependent on hearing the self-existent words. So here again, it's not something that is knowledge that it exists sort of autonomously from its own side. Like, for example, the Hindus would assert that the Vedas, these kinds of texts, were actually not taught by a human, but are something that is self-arisen in accordance with reality. So they sort of are like sounds that reflect the reality of the universe that are self-arisen, and they arose naturally without any kind of sort of being knowing them or the Vedas arose in this way that accords with reality. But the realization of the Buddha is not dependent upon hearing the Vedas. So again, anything according to this kind of system of the Vedas, they would say that anything that is not perceptible to our sense consciousnesses, those sort of manifest objects, that we can only know from these kinds of authentic texts. We have to consult, say, for example, the Vedas, in order to be able to know those things that are beyond our immediate comprehension, our immediate perception. But here, the Buddha did not realize this independence upon those texts, but rather was able to, through reasoning, come to an understanding of emptiness. And the Buddha did this for not for his own sake, but motivated by the intention to benefit all beings. So the Buddha pursued this kind of knowledge, taught this knowledge of emptiness, of selflessness to other sentient beings, motivated by an intention to benefit them, that for their sake of being able to gain a good rebirth as a human or a god, or be able to gain the definite goodness of liberation or the state of Buddhahood in order to help other sentient beings. He gave the 4 turnings of the wheel, taught this Dharma to others with the intention to be able to bring about their benefit. And really, the Buddha only has that kind of thought to benefit, as it continues into the next verse, the one who has a nature of great compassion. And then it says, not for a short time, but for innumerable eons. This kind of great compassion and nature of great compassion is not something that's just sort of temporary or for a short period of time, but for innumerable eons. And this Buddha spoke dependent arising and became the supreme speaker. So here, dependent arising, again, can encompass the sort of 2 levels of truth. Dependent phenomenon that arise due to causes and conditions, that being those conventional kind of phenomena, and then the ultimate reality of things lacking any kind of inherent existence, being empty of that sort of autonomous existence is their ultimate reality. And so here, there are, again, it says, it continues, I bow down to this omniscient being and will now summarize and explain some truths. So there are many different teachers who have sought to determine and kind of teach in accordance with reality. But here, addressing this idea of there not needing to be the intention of a creator deity, Shantarakshita here will explain some truths in accordance with the teaching of dependent origination.
Oh yeah, talk about this. Oh yeah, that they need to balance. Rangxin one day niga dansera. Rangxin said the chitso segura, Tangjian bo chitso se tangbu chenge ki judira. Takba rese, pembo rese, semyo ma rese, ina ko kar ko ba samade dig trup to yo rese, ki yo rese ra. Takba rese. Tanangba chene ju takba kheling maro. Koran ju yo mare, chitso le ju mare. Rangxin se wang den se wang ju chenbo ge. Chitso da ne wang ju chenbo ge yang ro ba chene. Kuni niga ge cheba chego rese. Tangjian la cheba da la me ba ne se do. La me ba che yang chu se. La de nyam do ko rese. Rangxin wang den se wang ju chenbo na. Niga cheba se ra. Da so che da zhe yo wa se. Da takba la so ba, changba la so ba. O ten de jiden ye cheba bo da. Zhewa rese, yoba ma rese. Yoba mebe kyan le teni chunga rese. Di shi do. Shi sungpa da shende te da ke tenjin rebar chunga. China ki ngobun de nam ki cheba bo nese. Di changme cheba bo ka rese na. Cheba bo nese ra. Chibabone, Sawe Ranshingi Chitsose. That is a Nishuanga Strangajari, who take Tambu de Sigara. Sawe Ranshingi Chitso Sigara, Chitso, Tembode, Gelia Juyamare, Taware, take any Kanga Church Panch and Nisha Kanga living water. Won't you ta, Tiniga Chebatas, won't you chembo, Kichever Shara, and a Tiniga Haruparucheta, Nyamdo Chever Shara. Sangbada, Takba Soji Chever Mama. Sangbada, and it Takbala Soba, and the Katiso Chever Mama. She Teda Naya, what in the Simambu Shara. Kedana Tamba Sanje, Ten Jungi, Nobon Deda, Shenda, Ki number Tokba Chinjilogi, Chita Treba Teda, and Trevor. Then Musum to Sixos. Oh, Sanje Chumden, they tender Maimbarwa. Tinjunga water da Shenda get trotabe. Oh, the net of Chula soba, and you then Sheba Pola soba. Oh, the Zag Shebati, Maris, the dog number dog by Chinjilogi, Chidder Trebas. Oh, you better Chinjilogi. Kuntu which Mambu Trebas, Keshes in the shade, soda. Treba da Trevor. Don't never Musum do six or say. Oh, Sanje Chumden, they take the mind by Musum do silly. And it's somebody sigora. Yeah,
So, continuing from Shantarakshita's Compendium of Reality, elsewhere it states, lacking a divine creator's will is freedom from creation by a permanent self, Brahma, and so forth, and is freedom from creation by the principal nature, or by both this nature and the divine creator. So here, again, the sort of principal nature asserted by the Samkhyas, there are those that assert such a principal nature in addition, and additionally assert some kind of a divine creator. And there are those then that are, so there are those that are theistic and those that are atheistic. And here the Samkhyas assert that there is this kind of principal nature, these 25 substances, enumerations of various categories of things, but this principal nature is itself material, and it is something that is uncaused, that autonomously gives rise to, or with the kind of help of a divine creator, then gives rise to all of the various internal and external things. So here, the non-Buddhists say that what creates internal and external things that arise dependently is either the universal principle that is the principal nature, both this nature and the divine creator, a permanent self or Brahma. So many non-Indian religions also posit a creator God. They sort of, the Buddha, the teacher, directly saw how things actually are, free of the way non-Buddhists elaborated, using mistaken concepts, that which is dependently arisen. So here, the Buddha was able to see the kind of exaggeration, the sort of proliferations of wrong ideas that were put on the things that are dependently arisen by these non-Buddhists, and based upon his understanding of reality, asserts the way that things actually are.
No, yeah. Don't touch. On that bed, Tinjung will take on any sick bandits or that to Bassanje from Dendeg. Tension driver Johan that they look tattoo sick battese. That comes with that turned and better when you sick battese or when I gave up on them yes, Chiri gave up on them ye, and then the shake race. Kai shake race. Teacher Wombo land that, well, so Tom, you mice. Make it now a nachi on bullship and wisdom to give us so that you reach out so but as long as you wisdom to Tongara. Teacher Wombo let the Zung wisdom to Tongamado, Ombo and debit, go give Shandato cigara. Ombo shebe she many better that's Ganga. Then we also told your mares and Razungo Sushi to Mares. Take a relate any charge hours and Chini Tawa can shake Toma Tene Tom Haese. Chini Tawa to Rang Shingi, Rawando Drube. Takwa tina le sheba sama temba yengenge. Rikji gi chik sigora, chik ni takwa rikji gi chik. 강식이 나래 셰바 셰여바 어디 통하데 통하르마도 딜레션바 지금 미 라와도 통 톱고 말에 셰 톱고 말에서 담미 지단 왕부 타도서 싱그레 소다저저 잘서 저중 무슨도 싱그레 마도 딜레데베테 무슨도 셰 톱고 말에서 딜레데베테 셰여나 리지기 슈나 가르셰도 따네 딜레타고르 산제 좀 된데게 떼진 레버는 주가 송바테 텐레베스라 어디 말에서 시바다 이나 냠나 산제게 텐데 텐데게 추식바데네 라와토바데에서 라와게 사마르tum동게게 라 르지게 슝도 주시거라 딜테네 좀 말에서 코란랑 무슨도 시니 송바데시거라 라레 참마르 주베 르지게 칠라 템바 르지게 칠라 마데 만데와르 텔렌데와게 요 마데시라 라니 정어수 세신 라와도 좀 봐서 산제 좀 된데 라니지 군주다 된다 베템바니데 무슨도 세신 랑게 식베 된데니 샹달이야 라와고네 템버제버데 마도 르지게 쇼레 카르셰토 시네 티나시 샤바 마레세 오 데숭다야
So here it continues saying, you say the teacher saw the reality of dependent arising, but the kind of non-Buddhist response to that, and this is coming again from the Compendium of Reality, it says, what is beyond the senses cannot be directly known. There is no way of knowing this other than by the self-existent words. So for them, these non-Buddhists would say that we are able to perceive these kinds of manifest objects. What is known by the senses can be directly known, but those things that are slightly hidden or hidden kinds of phenomena are not able to be known other than by knowing the self-existent words, than by knowing the Vedas. Now, this is not accepted by the Buddhists. So they in turn respond that it is not true. The Buddha saw the truth of dependent arising in the following manner: without being dependent on or connected to hearing these self-existent words, that is the Vedas or other such scriptures, which are said to be valid by their own nature, he saw this truth on his own and taught it through his direct understanding. So there's no connection to the kind of Vedas or these supposed arisen scriptures. Rather, the Buddha's understanding of this kind of hidden object comes, Buddhists would say, based upon his own realizations, based upon his own understanding, not due to the nature of something being valid in its own nature, sort of like these Vedas.
Oh, yeah. 오늘 때문에 텐데 시대를 송신하스 덤바산지 좀 된다게 대신 레버를 좋아 라 군주다 된다면 때문에 가서 이랬으나 설루장변도 레스 산지 설루장변도 나라서라 누구대야 다게 마셔서 누구대야 다게 지조를 봐 텐데값수 랑게 땅이데 연이야 제ben시거라 다케스도 자고 갈수고서 뒤뒤순 제부 강가 여고래서 그래 장점바게 뒤뒤순 제부도 여래서 여버래서 연애는 거란 수터용 거래서 랑신 수터용 거래서 거라 뒤뒤순 매번 제부 용해 요 말해서 그러나 뜰 용가리 얼와 뜰도 찌르는 놈 텅도 와서 뜰 춘주되는 놈 여여버려서 거라 여산 수찌는 쳐야 거래서 뒤뒤순 그 뜰기 뒤서 제부 놈 여여 가래서 그러나 제마 찌는 놈 쳐야 믿어와서 제말 놈 매자 고치는 쳐야 요 말해서 다가나시 오말이야 쇼요래서 거라 쇼여장고 제마 쇼차야도와 따라차야요래 추르차야요래 뒤 오메트스 요래서 거라 뒤에서 예벤 레부시께 거라마도 뒤 당니도 매베 레부께 요 말해서 거라 tel라 다게서 거라 뒤 내갑수랑 당니 요래 지소의 내갑수 뭐부 강가 요래 세부체는 우미가 통해 요 말은 미세베 주기요서 거라 세부 요 말에 때문에 그것도 어느 temps 세부체 되나 여여 수타용 거라 야 매우 차서나 야고 얘도 말에 지소를 봐 팀도니 앞에 대대요래 야지마 그저 수타용 거라 Oh, this is that Dali Kyore Sigora, Tindre Mare Sigora, Solution Bentole, Yugu Dias, Yugu Karin, Yugu Yena Dura, Dragon Yugu Yena, Karin, the Shindo of Karin, the Titus Kanga Sigora, Dagi Machese, Shenji Machese, Shen Ralingo, Tadbe Cushion Dashi, Rawadu to be Cushion, won't you love so but I Karin, Rawadu to be Cushion, Deushan Shabaya Mare, Shengese. Shengese de Rangone to Rawando to be Cushion, Deputy Shabaya Mare, Sora. Shenji Maches, Niga Maches, Taki Shenji Niga Yungumata Niga Shaba. Won't you get Maches, how won't you Chimbo, so Shabaya Mare, Sora. Tuji Majurse, Tuji, two Tagbasya, two Tagbasya, Wabakanga, two Tagbe Wankachuan Sura. Nikuya de two Wanga Niku, Sora, Nisaba the two Wanga Segars. Chatters cake captures do you want to cook cake capture words? Nobuganga do you want to charge? Two Tagbashagra. Two young Maris or young and Japaru, two you want to choose it, two medaba, the number two medabara. Two said the Congo Chilitan Pata Sharmado. Tagba engaging your mare. Conjuga two Tagba. Shebabu, two young Gunganga and Goresquara. Samuda Nimada Nawada Saval Sabako, two young Tagba. The number killing Mardo. Two Tagba Mare, number two or two medabare. Don't order Tapsunako, two lieutenant Jura Kalicalican and Semayaki Gudwa. Two Jiwanga Koyaki Gudwa, two Sultugra. Two medabare, two medabare, two Gimas, two Tawa. Shebabu in Bango Tamja Shebabu, two days or two Sigora. Two says Shoke, Kondanga to Chitu said to Chitireta. I got this one. You get my two my Jurse. Takbe tu de ba Jurse Mares water. Rangile Majons, Chiso Rangile Chuamare. Two men I Chuamares, Makides. Rajan Sada Chuda Meda Lunda Namgada, Tugi Kamnam, Dune Sedua. Sal Joal Tigri Chu Melo Namgada, Namgas Tonsan de Lesere. Tomba de Mane Kesera Marwa. She was already Tabushini Kesera Mara Tomba Korva. Tonsan de Puga Namgasera, Puga Namka. You got up to this. And Namgada did Namkataba says or Timare. Namkataba says you are a tia. Talk about the Ragza Mabasam de la Tabasura. Did Tonsan de la Sura, Utanchi, Mukshedua. Tomba is running over to the Kekuna Tomba in the Pelche Yorva. Oh, just say. Namgada do you come Nam Landune or Tezukanga Dune? Ne Sabian Gavanas, Sabio Tapshava de la Kozu, Robache, Nicotinea Chitoyangudwa. Oh, did Sabio de Panga, and you could do to Resewara. You go on Bandu and Jurte Ese. The Darchiru detention revenue again and draw towers, or Chiru Jungo, Sishin Nazala Soba Tezukangatia, Koran Tabia Sabian Telia, and then Sachu Melo Namka Tonsan Robache Tugi. Do that turning Gorachu, the Kalikali Duran to Benduvichen, and the Kigiorese. Just that Chiru Jungo, Ken and Delni Kigrese. Yes, do it Henji Ken del Sura, Sada, Chuda, Lunda, Namkada, Tesu Segura. Juice do Niele de la Sabio de la Sura. Kudan Ken says on a cute Niele Segura, Ken de Henji Chicken, Tumudu Chida Saga, Kangal Robachigra, Tumi Kudela Henji Chicken Segura. Tumu Maimbe Kudela Niele Segura. It's just like Ken and Dren and Kegurese. Nugutabushiki, Natsushina Salso Karikina, Ken and Dren and Kegures, Ken Kares now, that's other Chudameda, Namgata, Dula Sobatesu and Dren and Kegures. Shiva, ya Tiba the Chitano.
No. So here again, it continues saying, how did the teacher express his teachings on dependent arising? And it then quotes from the Rice Seedling Sutra itself, where it says, the sprout is not made by itself, not made by others, not made by both, not made by Ishvara, not transformed by time, not arisen from an essential nature, nor born without a cause. So here, it's not made by itself. When it comes to the kind of understanding of causality, there are those like the Samkhyas, for example, that assert that the result exists at the time of the cause. It's not the case that it's not yet manifest, but it exists at the time of the cause. They give the example like, well, when you press a mustard seed, you get oil out of that. And so that oil, that existed at the time of the cause. You don't have, for example, when you squeeze sand, you don't get oil out of that. And so for them, this is the way in which they try to assert that the results actually exist at the time of the cause in an unmanifest kind of form. Like within milk, we could say that yogurt exists, that butter and cheese exist. They just aren't yet manifest. And so these varieties of phenomenon, they would assert, will come about. They sort of arise from this primal substance, this permanent primal substance, and then they dissolve back into that. So here, this again contradicts the kind of assertion of dependent origination made by the Buddha. The sprout is not made by itself. Whatever object we take, whether we take a rice seedling or anything else, it's not self-arisen in this way, nor is it made by others in the sense of a cause that is established as different by means of its own nature. Like, for example, some kind of a creator deity that is of a permanent self-existent kind of nature, making all of these various things. This is not how it is that things come about. So the cause cannot be established as inherently of a different nature from the result. And nor is it the case that these various kinds of things, like a rice seedling, comes about due to the sort of thought of Ishvara, nor is it transformed by time. There are those that assert that time is permanent, yet acts as a cause. Like we sleep because it is the proper time. We wake up because it is the proper time. That time is acting as a cause. Like birds are crowing or chirping because it is the right time. And so time, they would assert, acts as a cause, although it is something that is impermanent, that is permanent. Whereas Buddhists would assert in contrast that causes are impermanent. And particularly time as a cause, like it takes time for a harvest to grow. That is something that is impermanent. It doesn't have any kind of permanence to it. So here, in contrast to those that would assert that permanent time could act as a cause, it asserts here in the sutra that things are not transformed by time, nor are they arisen from some kind of an essential nature, nor are they born without a cause, nor do they arise causelessly. However, the elements of earth, water, fire, air, space, and season having assembled, when the seed ceases, the sprout will be produced. Like that, dependence on conditions of external dependent arising is to be seen. So here, it is due to all of these various causes and conditions coming about that a seedling will arise. Here, where it says space, we need to have space. Like there has to be an empty space for that sprout to arise into, or it won't be able to come about. Now here, when we're talking about like space as being a cause, we shouldn't think of it as space that is just the sort of lack of obstructive contact that could be permanent, but rather this is the kind of ability for the free space to allow that kind of sprout to come into being. And so in this way, it acts as a cause. And so here, this again is a situation where all of the sort of causes and conditions come together in order for the sprout to be produced. And that only happens when the seed ceases. They don't exist at the same time. And so here, there there are causes and conditions that are necessary for the coming about of a rice seedling, for example. And so we can see that there is the substantial cause, that thing that has the efficacy to bring about a particular result. And then those kinds of coordinating conditions, like water and fertilizer and heat and so forth. And so it is necessary to have both the causes and the proper sort of cause, the substantial cause, as well as the kind of coordinating conditions for something to be brought about. This is the way that external dependent arising is to be seen.
Oh yeah. So she batar the solution be do ka so so. So she sung batar se gora. Ngabo namra ra ge kyujin de gagwana se ra ge kyu nyelen ge kyu sabyan darwa ke sashu melon la soba de la soba tu so ne. And de kyu gagwana se kyu nyelen ge sabyan de pangane. Sabyan je tene nyu ki mardo. Sabyan de pangane. ane nyuguya ke ungo re chara. Tike sabyo de nyuguya ke robotele kento suge sachu melo namga tula sobate su chigre se ora. Dede kyun gagba na se kyu sabyo de gagba na debi ngobo rangi ke ba imbe se hotel tene kyukin sobate dala tenje delne ane debi de kigyo re chara. Tenje yada ba chita washin juam tenje del bari jun se de Judan Ken la Tene, and Judin Gabana, Drebuti, Yatan Yone, Chitawashi to Juarese, Chimachi Shinchani Juarese, Tenjin Deber Juam Senada, Judan Ken Duba la Tene, Yabuche Terra, moving net on the Timbachani Chitawashi Juam Segrese, Juan Senada, Tenjin Deber Juas, Tenjin, Judan Ken la Tenjin, Dedan Drelne, Judan Ken Lindraw Mabashamarwa. Teso Gundelne, Tedan Drene, Judin Gagwana, Tedan Drene, Deputy King Gudwa. Niling Judidan Drene. Judin Gasarishaya, Chimando was Kiwa Marwa. Judi Yone, Judusun, Deputy Watandre Marwa. Judipanga and Jurachi, Deputy Atayungure Sigora. Tenjin, Delbar Joma in Hosa. Tenango Nam. Kanango nam kyu meba la tene kiyo mare nebadu juku yore kuching bashi la tene kuching debu sama ketum getende yo mare chera ra ani jurmi je takbe ju nangba chene yo mardo takba ine jura mebe kuching debu kiyo ne kadu ine keje bayangura debu dhamma ke na kon jura chewra kudile juwa chindone kudan kenlen juwa chene ani debu ke gura takbe juine takbalin juran roya yo marwa. Ane Koran yoba sam bikigi yo na ane takbare kegi bategra tu dato. Tu chile magine nego tamjo de kegi marwa. Sako chawa chewura judan ken sede juni nambarin juro na juchi che dele kengi pan juro chitane te an jundu de ane drebu ke ura. Juni nambarin juro na shengi juro de chera. Jura majo je gyu khora takba se desha nempine drebu kigi na ani tu ta tu ke kore yana tu chigla ma giba shingdo ndaba che am ndaba che jangme yula me giba shindo tsawe yula kigi mare yana tsawe yula am kibar chigi yana takba ki kigi yana se wara ani kunga da chi kaba yana ke shawara dile ma giya keba kare se ne judan kenlen juwa yosan tigi yin kura takbalin juwa mena debu tu tatu keje ka yana name maki chikle tu chikle maki na yu chikle maki na tamche tu maki kukura takba ke debu kena debu di tu tatu tu chikle kena tu tatu keje ka yungure yu chikle kena yu tamche tu keje ba yungure yu chikle maki na yu tamche tu maki ba yungure yun gashile ke gashile maki na kun jura chin dugi betare yun gashile ke de kun jura chin chi sanru de kigora yunga shil maje de chi masani kigwa mara ranga ki wasura ranga maje na ko jude ta kela to ne jura chi chani ki ko betara juda kengi jura chi samasal ta ko mena kena tu ta do lungba chil kena lungba tham chil ke tu chil kena tu tham chil ke lungba chil maje na lungba tham chil maje ba chongba ko ura kashil maje ke ba yung ma ranga ki wasura ranga ki wasude jude sandu 규진 선도 끼고야 규진 마산도 끼고 말아 나 된다 보셔 아니 관도서 규진 바실에 끼와 메로셔라 규메바다 규진 바실에 때는 끼와 끼고 말아 규르미게 딱 받아 참이게 찍고 규르미게 딱 배줄에 되고 끼와 말아 참이게 딱 배줄에 잠메게 신서라 라랑 깨지긴 된지 규 남란지데 괴바벨로 요에 원주체남이죠. 라라 깨지기 교단께 요아래 텔이야 아니야. 네가 용서 상이나야 텔라 단다 마기비전지된 괴바보되게 굴로 삼로다는 다 깨고 요에서도 약게 용게 된대요 말이셔라. 주진이 네가 용서 손에 내게 용 그랬어. 뭐야 뒤바도 시죠. 저 밑에도 세바도.
So here, once the individual causes and conditions of composite things have assembled, they cease to exist, and the composite thing that is their effect is produced. So here again, if the seed remains, we can't talk about a seedling coming about. There's no way for a result to be produced at the time of the seed. Rather, it's from the sort of ceasing of the cause that the result is then produced. That's how composite things work. And so this is therefore called dependent and linked arising, or dependent and precisely correct arising. So here it is through that kind of connection with causes and conditions, and not just any sort of causes and conditions, but the proper kind of causes and conditions, that a result is brought forth from a particular cause. So it can't be sort of a permanent cause. Again, the problem with something being asserted as a permanent cause is that it would not be able to change. Like the way that we understand is it's that change that brings a result. So something that is asserted to be permanent doesn't have that kind of capacity to bring something about. If it were the case that a cause were permanent, then it would logically, we would have to say that the effect would arise at all times in all places. If the kind of cause is asserted to be permanent, then the result too will have to be permanent. It will have to span all times, all places. There's no sort of difference in its arising. Like for example, we can see a mango tree. A mango tree grows in places that are warm, and it produces mangoes at a particular time of year. And because those mangoes arise occasionally, we can assert that the causes of their arising are impermanent. If it weren't the case, and instead the cause of a mango were permanent, then we would have to see mangoes everywhere at all times, regardless of what kind of place it is or season or whatever. They would have to be producing their fruits. And so this kind of assertion of Buddhists that things are occasional, that they only come about due to certain, like at certain times in certain places, this is a reason that we can assert that all things are impermanent. If it were the case that there were a permanent cause that brought something about, then it would have to be the case that that result were arising at all times in all places. But this is not the case. So things are not able to arise from a lack of causes and conditions. They need to have the proper sort of causes. And they don't arise from just only one cause. It's not like there's one single thing. Again, like the thought of a creator just willing things into existence, but rather it's necessary to have all of the kind of causes and conditions come together in order for something to come about. And nor do things arise from a cause that is permanent, as it was discussed above, changeless, or a singular and partless whole. They each arise from causes that have the capacity to produce them. So here we can see the kind of conditions of those causes, that they cannot be permanent, changeless, or a singular, partless whole. And those causes that bring about results need to have the sort of efficacy, the capacity to produce that particular result. And thus they cannot be produced by being empowered with the will of a divine creator of the world, such as Ishvara. So that is the sort of Buddhist rebuke to these particular kinds of causes.
Oh yeah,
So the time is up for today, so we'll stop there.
Oh yeah.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of wholesome's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Hola.
We're so glad the causes and conditions have come together for you to teach us.
Kailangan nganso la chu suyang gyudang gen sangma sang yorwa. Ani nganso gabo chungso.
Oh, yeah.
So grateful for your interpretation. Thank you again.
What's
And we'll see everyone online.